everything you need to know about the basics of a Campus to Canton league. We're going to go over all of that right after the stinger. It's Felix Sharpe and Austin Nace for Campus2Canton.com. It's about time we've done a video like this where we cover everything that you need to know about getting started in a Campus to Canton league. Austin, I think a natural place to start is because it's still a new format, is what the heck is a Campus to Canton league? What is it?
Yeah, Campus to Canton league is kind of the next evolution in fantasy football. If you started with your redraft league, you know, with your friends, you drafted an NFL team every year. Then you kind of thought about, dynasty. What if I keep that roster every year? We just draft rookies every year. We kind of build our team like that. What happens if you take that a step further and say, we're not even drafting rookies. We're taking these guys when they're still in college. And guess what? They're getting fantasy points. They're scoring fantasy points when they're down there for me as well. That's basically what Campus to Canton is. 2 separate leagues combined into one. You have a college fantasy championship. You have your regular dynasty championship. And as those guys declare for the draft, leave college, they move on up to your NFL team. So there's your pipeline. No rookie drafts. We don't get the benefit of seeing what does the NFL think of this guy. We're picking these guys as 17, 18-year-old kids and saying, let's roll the dice here. Let's see what this kid can be.
Just to reiterate here, so you can draft the incoming freshman class in 2024. You have a roster full of college players, and then when those college players declare for the NFL draft, they're added to your NFL team. So I think one of the things that I love is, when I was first out of college, I had a job, and a friend of mine, Jason, I would kind of water cooler talk with him about the Lions after Sunday on Monday morning, and because the Lions sucked, we would talk about the NFL draft. If you are into evaluation and you are into the NFL draft, like Campus to Canton leagues would be perfect for you because it emphasizes, your thoughts on incoming freshmen. It emphasizes evaluation. It emphasizes all of these things. And then on Saturday, you have this league that's going and you're trying to win that side of the league. I mean, I think if you love football, not just fantasy football, but if you're the type that watches a bowl game between 2 G5 teams or you go to Friday Night Lights, I think Campus to Canton leagues are exactly what you need to be playing in.
Yeah, the full gamut of kind of enjoying football from like you said, the MAC, Akron, and Ball State to USC versus Oregon. I mean, you get to watch all of it, get to enjoy all of it, get to take something potentially from all those games, which is very, very exciting.
Oh, so of course the natural question is where can I play in a Campus to Canton league? Well, you can play the NFL side of your league pretty much anywhere you play fantasy football, Sleeper, MFL, ESPN, but the college side of your league, as of today's date, the only place you can play is Fantrax, and Fantrax actually offers both college and NFL. So if you wanted to, you could hypothetically have both sides of the leagues there. But that's where we play the college side. I think, a few years down the line, especially with college football and those players becoming more visible, that we'll have more platforms offering college football. We've seen recently Sleeper added a college football Twitter account. I don't know what that means, but they are actually tweeting about college football content. So maybe we'll see something down the line. But as of right now, Fantrax is the only place where you can play on the college side. And quite frankly, since we started, Austin, I think Fantrax product, and this is not a Fantrax product sponsored video, but I think Fantrax product has really evolved and has gotten better since we started playing C2Cs in 2020 or so.
Yeah, Fantrax, I think, gets a little bit of a bad rap because there's maybe 1 or 2 quirks to the website, but I really think all these fantasy sites kind of have a quirk. It just depends. If you're used to it because you've been playing on it for long enough to kind of, be familiar with the platform. So I think Fantrax is great. I think it has a lot of different capabilities. It's very straightforward. They have an app now. They didn't have an app a couple years ago. They really have kind of brought the platform into kind of a more modern era of fantasy football, I think. And I think it's very easy to use for people who have never used it before.
So we're setting up 2 leagues here, Austin. Do you have and you can use the NFL side to kind of set up your traditional NFL dynasty league, but do you have any favorite settings on the college side of your leagues, whether that be, PPR, Superflex, double Superflex, anything like that?
Well, I think, if you're thinking about the NFL and why we tend to a lot of the times play super flex fantasy football on that side of things in a dynasty league, it's because there's, it gives quarterbacks a little more value, but there's only 32 teams really at any given time. There's 20 to 25 quarterbacks we like. College has 134 teams and kind of adding every year. Quarterback in these leagues, you tend to start at least two. Every single one of my leagues starts at least two. Some of them are 2 plus a super flex. Some of them are start 3. I think 2 is a bare minimum, and it sounds like a big leap, but there's a lot of these guys out there. It really is not that crazy. A lot of athletes that just happen to play quarterback position. I mean, it's a totally different position than the NFL. So I think that's the first major thing that comes to my mind is that like quarterback, you're starting at least 2, maybe 3. Felix, you're crazy with the quarterbacks. You have any leagues that do 4?
No, I've not had leagues to do 4, but the thing about having, a super flex or double super flex that I really like along with the quarterback position is you can be a college football fan and let's say you draft Arch Manning. You can start him along with the quarterback from Western Michigan or Fresno State or Nevada. And you have kind of this, an interest all over college football. And so I again, having really liking football, liking Maction, liking the games, the G5 games that are on Thursday night, in Campus to Canton leagues, all of those players have value. Now, not all of those players are going to be NFL players, but because you have this deep college side, generally the college side is 45 rounds to start, 45 round startup draft. You kind of get a little piece of everything, and I think that that's enjoyable.
Yeah, the values you'll find, it's almost like if you're playing you're used to traditional dynasty leagues, when somebody's date of retirement is. And you're kind of planning around that, that expiration date. You knew 3 years in advance when Julio Jones's last day in NFL football would be. That's what you get with a lot of these guys. The running back at Memphis, we know he's a senior. He has no more eligibility. He's graduating. So it changes up a little bit of what you want to do. But the sheer amount of teams just means that you've got all these different guys that you can plug and play. And for every guy that's leaving, there's at least 1 or 2 coming in to kind of take their spot the following year.
This is probably a good spot to mention here, just to reemphasize, on the college side of C2C leagues, the standard is 45 rounds in your startup draft. So you have 45 players, but that's going to be a mix of freshmen, of players who you project to the NFL, of players who only score points on the college side, some of those G5 players. I would say, generally speaking, in a startup draft, and Austin, correct me if I'm wrong, but in the first couple of rounds, you're drafting those guys that you believe have NFL futures. So, from this 2024 class, Caleb Williams, a first-round startup pick. Marvin Harrison Jr., a first-round startup pick. Somebody like Emeka Ibuka, Travion Henderson, Quinshawn Judkins, Brock Bowers, all of those guys, first-round startup picks. And then, we get to later rounds. We see guys like LaJohntay Wester. Actually, LaJohntay Wester from FIU. He wasn't drafted, but he was probably picked up as a.
Think about Rashee Rice.
Rashee Rice or Malachi Corley. Corley, because of Western Kentucky's offense there. You kind of drafting those guys thinking that they're going to score a lot of points on the college side of the league. Or some cheat code players, these guys who are, wide receivers, but actually are designated as tight ends, guys like Dalvin Smith at the aforementioned Western Kentucky or Oronde Gadsden at Syracuse. Any thoughts or strategies on just generally how you're drafting in a startup draft on the college side of your C2C?
Yeah, I mean, I think without getting too into it, too deep into the weeds, I think that's kind of the fun part about these is that I don't know that there's a right or a wrong way. I've seen people where they really just focus on that NFL talent. They're trying to squeeze every ounce of that they can get at every single pick through all 45 rounds. Other people, they kind of skip that part. They say, I'm just, there's money to be won on the college fantasy side of things. I'm going to draft all these college fantasy guys. I don't care if they're going to make it to the NFL. I'm sure some of them will. And that's what happens with guys like Malachi Corley, like Rashee Rice, like Tank Dell. Those are all guys that I don't think anybody was drafting with the thought of high-end NFL upside. So I think, and then you can do a mix of them. You start NFL, then you get some more college fantasy guys. You stash some freshmen like you would stash rookies in a dynasty draft. And I think kind of that blend is what makes a C2C league really interesting. And I think that's, each league is almost its own separate kind of ecosystem where some guys prefer one way, some guys prefer the other way. And that's it makes the leagues more interesting for sure.
Austin, do you have any thoughts on when someone should start a startup? I think, right now is probably a good, actually, maybe not right now. Maybe after we get through the spring football season, that's probably the perfect time to do your startup draft. Do you agree? And if so, why?
I think it depends on your knowledge of college football and the access that you have to resources at any given time. If you are a total college football degenerate, you watch it all Saturday, and then once the weekday games roll around, you're up every night watching those. You know all the stats, you know all the players. I think the earlier in the offseason is the better for you. You kind of already have an idea of the depth charts of the guys who are coming back, of the freshmen coming in. Perhaps you really follow recruiting really, really heavily. Early in the offseason, there's not a lot of information. We haven't had spring practice yet. The transfer portal hasn't, that's a new kind of addition to college football. That hasn't settled yet. So there's a lot of question marks still. So if you're a diehard, I think March, April, May, great times for you to be drafting. If you don't have that kind of knowledge, I think the later in the summer that you can do it, the better. You'll start getting some of those local beat guys that are covering some of these practices with a little more, news and notes. There's different places online that kind of get that information and compile it all together for you. You can start reading up on that a little bit. So there is a little more of a crutch, I would say, an information crutch, the later in the offseason you do it. So if you think you're really, really good, do one today. If you don't, let's wait a couple months and get it done then.
My vote would be after the spring, probably in the summer, because by that time we've gone through spring practice. We kind of hear the drum beats for some of these freshmen. We know what their value is. I know a couple of years ago, DJ Uiagalelei and Bryce Young were really high draft picks. Part of that because was their recruiting pedigree. Part of it because of how they played in their respective springs and spring games. But even a guy like Kevin Concepcion at NC State, we kind of heard the drum beat for him in the offseason, and then that continued in their spring game. So if you do your startup draft, your college side startup draft in the summer, you have that information. Some of it has been leaking to you, and you kind of know you have a little bit more solidification of those players' value. So my vote would be, if you're doing this for the first time, do your startup drafts, both the NFL side and the NCAA side, maybe around May. May probably be the earliest, like Austin said. Austin, the question would be, who do you play with? But if you don't have 12 of your close friends, now I like playing with people that I know, where can you find some people that might be interested in actually playing in a C2C league with you?
Yeah, I mean, the nice thing is I think the format has grown a fair amount over the past few years. It used to, really have to send out the bat signal on Twitter and hope that you could find 11 other folks to hop in a league with you. I think now the best place is I think our Discord is great. Campus2Canton.com. Any of our members can get in there.
I set you up. See, I set you up. Threw you to alley-oop, and you go ahead and dunk it. Go ahead.
I figured that's the direction you wanted me to go. It's a little early still. Today there aren't a ton of people, but I bet by April, May, June, there's going to be a ton of people looking for leagues in there. Other places, if you're just looking online, Twitter is okay. There aren't a lot of other places beyond that. Maybe some other, Discords that float around the college football kind of space. But we always have a ton of people looking for leagues. Either they've got one they're starting up, or they're looking to join one. I just really beg your friends. It took us 5 years, but I finally got a home league, a C2C league put together. So if I can do it, you guys can do it too.
Take Austin's advice there. Join the Discord at Campus2Canton.com. It's $2.99 a month or $29.99 for the year. You can find people looking for Campus to Canton leagues there. Just one more note: League Safe or Team Stake, these websites that allow you to deposit your league dues there, and then winnings are dispersed from there. I'm doing that every single time. I'm not, especially if I don't know you, I'm not just Venmoing you money. So that's
you can do it. You can do it right on Fantrax too. Actually,
I forgot about that. Yes, yeah. And Sleeper actually. Sleeper, I believe, has a similar function now also. Austin, talk to me a little bit about bylaws, because this is going to be important for a league where you have, two sides. You got two sets of picks. You've got two sets of rosters. Talk to me just a little bit about bylaws and where people may be able to find them.
Yeah, so we have a default set that you can download at Campus Canton. I believe anybody can access them. You don't have to be a member to do that. And I think that's a great place to start if you have no idea. I wouldn't really recommend writing them from scratch. There are so many different scenarios that can pop up that if you haven't played this kind of format before, you're really not thinking about them. They're not in the forefront of your thought process. So I would go check that out, or ask around online, ask other people. If you're joining a league with people you don't know, hey, are you guys in any other C2C leagues? Do we have some bylaws here that we can start building off of? But I think it's really important in those bylaws, just like if you've played Dynasty Fantasy Football, to lay out the groundwork of exactly how the league calendar works every year, when you're drafting every single year, when you have to make cuts, what the roster sizes are, rules on, taxi squads, if you're letting, players go on taxi squads, on IR, all those different things, I think are really, really important to cover ahead of time. You can't cover everything. I think if the COVID year taught us anything for fantasy football, it was that. But having some really ironclad bylaws is really important to start out.
The bylaws are going to govern the relationships, what happens with trades. For example, if you trade future first round picks, do you have to pay dues for the following year, et cetera, that type of thing. So bylaws are very important. And I will include a link to our suggested bylaws in the description box of this video. What else here? So Austin, after we have the startup draft in year one, in year two, we have a freshman draft and the NFL draft. Can you talk to me a little bit about, so let's start with the freshman draft and what that entails.
Sure. So the freshman draft is going to be your more valuable draft of them. If you think about it, you've probably got in your C2C league, Caleb Williams rostered, Marvin Harrison Jr. rostered, Malik Neighbors rostered. All these guys are probably already rostered. So, the 101 in a typical dynasty rookie league is one of those guys. Those are no longer available. So the freshman picks tend to really be the more valuable ones. And how the freshman drafts typically work every year. Typically, if you have a 45 man roster, usually 15 rounds, kind of a third of the roster you can turn over in that draft. And it's all the incoming freshmen, and then all the free agents as well are also included in there. That's why it's often called a supplemental draft and not really a freshman draft, because all those guys are also available. So players that transferred this offseason, went to a much more appealing landing spot, or maybe somebody left, leaving a void in a very interesting system. We really like the running backs at this school, and now the starter is available. But that's usually how those go. The freshmen tend to be the most valuable pieces. Think about Arch Manning, you were talking about earlier. He was a very early pick last year, obviously being a Manning. Other quarterbacks last year, Nico Iamaleava at Tennessee, Dante Moore, who was at UCLA. Those 5-star kind of guys that are seen as kind of can't miss prospects, those are really the valuable guys. You're taking them early, and then you're kind of picking up some of those, quote unquote, college fantasy only players a little bit later to kind of round out your roster.
Yeah, so in the 2024 class, if you're a fan of Nebraska and you want to draft Dylan Raiola or Micah Hudson at Texas Tech or Jeremiah Smith at Ohio State, you can draft those players in your freshman drafts. And that's another reason why you would want to wait until after the spring, so you can, kind of get a sense for some of these 4-star guys. Are they running with the 1s? Are they running with the 2s? How much time are they getting in practice? You get more of that information if you wait until after the spring practice season is over. What else do we need to cover here? What about tanking, Austin? Do you have any specific opinions on tanking, on how to prevent it or allowing it? What are your thoughts?
I think the nature of, having two separate fantasy teams, the college side and the NFL side, I think it's really hard. Like, if you're tanking on one side, you're presumably doing probably pretty well on the other side. I find tanking to be a much less of an issue in C2C leagues. The rookie picks aren't worth anything. It's not like you're, trying to be the worst team to go get Caleb Williams. Guess what? Somebody already has Caleb Williams. I find tanking on the college side is less valuable than on the NFL side, because you still got to wait for these kids to get through 3 or 4 years of college. It's really hard to consistently project this guy is the best guy in this class coming out of high school. So I actually find tanking to be less of an issue for sure, but I would still think, if you're very worried about it, same rules can apply. Make sure you're starting your best lineups. Make sure you're sitting guys that are on bye weeks, all of those kinds of things. Those are certainly good rules to still have instituted.
I think the easiest way to prevent tanking is on both sides. Just have the max points for toggle time switched on. So that's who gets, the pick selection is determined by that metric. Then it's a little bit more objective. It kind of prevents tanking because if you bench your players, we're still counting the max points for. I want to jump back, and I'm doing a terrible job at quarterbacking this thing, but I want to jump back a little bit to the draft. So you have the freshman draft on the college side, but every year you also have an NFL draft for any of that class that wasn't rostered on the college side. Now, sometimes some leagues prevent you from drafting FCS players. For example, Trey Lance a couple of years ago was a consensus number 1 overall pick on the NFL side in the rookie draft because he was not rostered. A guy like Travis Hunter may have been a top pick if you thought, hey, he's not just going to play quarterback, he's going to play wide receiver also. Christian Watson coming out of North Dakota. If you think about Ramondre Stevenson, his second to last year at Oklahoma, he was suspended because of something that happened in the bowl game, was suspended for the first 6 games of the season, then kind of really rolled at the end of the season, was not rostered in a lot of places, also was splitting time with Kennedy Brooks. He was, a first or second pick in his rookie class in Campus2Canton leagues on the NFL side. So just to give some context there. I think that covers a little bit of the basics. I know we went through this a little bit fast, but if you are, a football fan in general, a college football fan, I can't emphasize enough how much fun you will have in playing Campus2Canton leagues. And we have a lot of tools to help you with this information if you aren't familiar with these college players. We have the freshman guide that will tell you about the freshman classes, 2024 class, but you can get the 2 previous years guides if you'd like to. We have our rankings available at the website. I mean, it's like 1,000 players, college players ranked there. We have objective tools. Any of those charts that you might see, those player comparison charts that you might see on Twitter from Campus2Canton.com. As a matter of fact, I'll put a picture of one up right here. You can get all of that at Campus2Canton.com if you become a member. Any final words here? I know I should be forgetting. I'm probably forgetting something here, Austin. What should we include?
I think the main thing that I always try to tell people when they're starting a C2C league, they've never played before, is that it seems like an information overload. It seems very daunting. You're learning a whole new set of players that is 4 times as big, 5 times as big as the one that you're typically used to in the NFL. But I really think once you get into it, you get a couple of months into kind of your first season, you know the names by then, you know the teams by then, and it really becomes basically just like managing an NFL roster, albeit with some more names. So I really think, it seems intimidating at first. Don't let it intimidate you. If you have questions, we're always there to help. And I think you'll surprise yourself with how quickly you kind of catch up to, and feel like you know what you're talking about.
Hey, like this video, subscribe to the channel. We're dropping content here all the time to help you with your Campus2Canton leagues. And if you have any questions, drop them in the comment box and we'll answer them. I think that's it. All right, y'all. Peace.